The late afternoon sun dipped low, painting the rolling hills of rural Oregon in hues of gold and amber. Heat rose in waves from the cracked asphalt of the parking lot outside Greenleaf Market, a modest grocery store nestled at the edge of Willow Creek. Inside a sleek silver SUV, Clara Hensley adjusted her scarf and turned up the air conditioning, the cool air a brief respite from the world's unrelenting demands. She'd been driving for hours, weaving through quiet backroads where Greenleaf stores stood as familiar beacons. Owning one of the largest grocery chains in the Pacific Northwest was no small feat, but Clara never trusted polished reports from distant offices. She needed to see the truth for herself, how her stores ran, how her employees fared. In her late 50s, Clara carried a quiet strength, honed by years of clawing her way up in a world that often dismissed her. Born to a family of loggers and schoolteachers, she'd watched her parents pour their lives into work that barely paid, their exhaustion a constant shadow. That memory fueled her. She wasn't just a CEO, she was a woman who understood what it meant to be overlooked. Glancing at the dashboard clock, she spotted the Greenleaf sign ahead, its faded green letters beckoning. Perfect timing. She pulled into the lot. Greenleaf Market sat at the heart of Willow Creek, flanked by a dusty hardware store and a diner with flickering neon lights. Clara parked near the entrance, stepped out, and inhaled the scent of pine and warm pavement. The air felt heavy, not just with summer's weight, but with something unspoken. She grabbed a reusable tote from the back seat and headed inside, the glass doors sliding open with a soft hum. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting a sterile glow over shelves stocked with canned goods, fresh produce, and snacks. A coffee station sat in the corner, its pot barely warm, the air tinged with the faint staleness of spilled milk and overripe fruit. Behind the counter, an older woman named Esther worked the register, her hand steady but her face etched with quiet strain. Her name tag gleamed under the lights, and her graying hair was pulled back tightly, as if holding herself together. Clara grabbed a bottle of iced tea from a cooler and approached, her eyes scanning the store. Something was off. The employees moved with a guarded precision. No laughter, no casual chatter, just the mechanical rhythm of tasks. A young man stocking apples in the produce aisle kept his head down, his movements almost too careful. "Afternoon," Clara said, setting her tea on the counter. Esther looked up, her smile faint but polite, like someone too tired to mean it. "Afternoon, ma'am. Need anything else?" Clara shook her head, stirring her drink as she lingered. Customers shuffled through, grabbing bread or milk, but no one stayed long. Esther's eyes flicked toward the back of the store every few seconds, her fingers twitching slightly as she rang up the purchase. The sliding doors hissed open, and a man strode in, broad-shouldered, with dark hair mussed from running his hands through it. His Greenleaf manager badge read Travis Holt. The moment he spotted Esther, his face hardened. "Esther, come on," he snapped, his voice slicing through the hum of the store. "You're moving like you've got all day. Pick it up." The store fell silent. Customers paused, their hands hovering over cereal boxes. The young stalker glanced over, but quickly looked away, busying himself with a crate of oranges. Esther's shoulders stiffened, her hands fumbling with a receipt. "I'm sorry, Mr. Holt," she murmured, eyes fixed on the counter. "Sorry doesn't cut it," Travis said, stepping closer, his presence looming. "Customers don't wait for you to figure it out. Get it together, or I'll find someone who can." Clara's grip tightened on her bottle. She'd seen intimidation before. Hell, she'd fought through worse, but this was different. Esther's face crumpled, not in tears, but in a quiet defeat that stung Clara's heart. She scanned the store, searching for someone to intervene. The customers kept their heads down. The stalker rearranged the same apples. No one would challenge him. Anger simmered in Clara's chest, a slow burn that steadied her. This wasn't just a bad day for Travis. This was a pattern, and she wasn't leaving until she understood it. The tension in Greenleaf Market thickened, heavy as the humid air outside. Clara lingered near the coffee station, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup as she watched Travis. He hadn't noticed her yet, his focus locked on Esther, who was struggling to keep up with a line of customers. His voice cut through again, sharp and deliberate. "Esther, If you can't handle a simple transaction, maybe it's time to step aside. Esther flinched, her hands trembling as she handed a customer their change. Clara felt a pang of empathy. She knew that fear, the kind that made you shrink to avoid a blow. She'd dealt with men like Travis, small men who mistook cruelty for authority. He wasn't just berating Esther, he was ensuring everyone saw it, a warning to anyone who dared falter. The store grew quiet, customers pretending not to notice, their eyes fixed on their carts. A young woman arranging candy bars near the register kept her head down, her hands moving faster, as if afraid to draw attention. The stalker, a lanky kid named Jonah, hesitated, his gaze flickering between Esther and Travis before he turned back to his work. Clara took a slow sip of her tea, her mind racing. The silence wasn't just awkward, it was practiced. These employees had learned to stay quiet, to let Travis's words pass unchallenged. She wasn't going to. Stepping toward the counter, she kept her tone light. "Excuse me, do you have any discounts on bulk produce today?" Travis barely glanced at her. "No." She tilted her head, undeterred. "Really? I've seen other Greenleaf stores offering deals this week." He turned now, annoyance flashing in his eyes. "This store runs my way. If there was a discount, I'd know." Clara smiled politely, but her eyes held his. "Interesting. And do you set the schedules too?" His brows furrowed. "What's it to you?" "Just curious," she said, her voice steady. "Seems like a tough job, managing all this, making sure everyone gets fair hours." Travis leaned on the counter, sizing her up. "I run this place how it needs to be run. My employees know that." There it was, the arrogance, the assumption that fear equaled loyalty. Clara nodded, filing his words away. She stepped back, finding a small table near the window with a view of the store. Esther's hands still shook as she rang up the next customer. Jonah kept his head down, stacking cans with unnecessary focus. Near the back, Clara caught a whispered conversation between two workers. "You worked till closing again?" the young woman murmured, restocking chips. Esther glanced toward Travis before whispering, "It's fine. I can't afford to lose hours." Clara's heart sank. This wasn't one bad moment, it was a system. As she considered her next move, a sudden shout broke the quiet. "I'm done!" Jonah ripped off his Greenleaf apron and tossed it onto a shelf, his face flushed with frustration. "I'm sick of this. Every shift, it's the same. Overworked, underpaid, and him." He jerked a thumb toward Travis. The young woman gasped. "Jonah, wait!" "No!" he snapped, his voice cracking with exhaustion. "I'm out." Travis looked unimpressed, leaning against the counter. "Go ahead, quit. I don't need workers who can't handle it." Jonah laughed bitterly. "You don't need workers at all. That's why everyone's leaving." Clara watched closely. Travis's face didn't change. No anger, no surprise, just a smug calm. This wasn't new to him. Jonah shook his head and stormed out, the doors sliding shut behind him. As he passed Clara's table, their eyes met for a moment. She saw the weight in his gaze. Anger, yes, but also defeat. It broke something in her. Travis turned to the remaining employees. "Anyone else?" Silence. He smirked, satisfied. Clara set down her tea. She'd seen enough. As she walked to her car, her mind churned. This wasn't just Travis. This was bigger. A culture of fear that reached beyond one store. She slid into the driver's seat, but instead of starting the engine, she pulled out a notebook. Years in business had taught her to trust her instincts, and hers were screaming now. She jotted down what she'd seen. Jonah's resignation, Esther's fear, the employees' silence. Then the questions. How many had quit? Why was no one speaking up? Was corporate aware, or were they turning a blind eye? Clara didn't drive away. She circled to the back of the store, parking in a gravel lot near the loading dock. The hum of the town faded, replaced by the clatter of crates and the faint murmur of an employee taking a break. She reached for her phone, accessing Greenleaf's employee database. It didn't take long to find a lead. Lila Carter, a former cashier who'd left 6 months ago, no exit reason listed. That alone raised flags. Clara typed a message. "Hi Lila, this is Clara Hensley, CEO of Greenleaf Market. I'd like to talk about your time at Willow Creek. I understand if you're hesitant, but even a few minutes would help." She hesitated, then hit send. To her surprise, a reply came quickly. "I'll talk. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., Willow's Cafe." Clara smiled faintly. She glanced at the store's back entrance, where Jonah sat on a crate, staring at his phone, his shoulders slumped. She made a mental note. She'd need to reach him too. Starting the car, she drove off, determination settling in her bones. Tomorrow, she'd start digging. The next morning, Clara arrived early at Willow's Cafe, a cozy spot with wooden tables and the rich aroma of fresh coffee. She chose a booth by the window, watching the quiet street. At 9 a.m., sharp, a woman in her 30s walked in. Lila, her posture wary, but her eyes sharp. She slid into the booth without a word. "You're really the CEO?" Lila asked, her tone skeptical. Clara gestured to her bag overflowing with papers. "I don't carry this much for fun." Lila gave a small laugh, then leaned back, clutching her coffee. "So, what do you want to know?" "Tell me about Travis," Clara said. Lila's expression darkened. "It started small, long hours, no breaks. I thought it was just the job, but then he'd punish you for asking for time off. Cut your shifts to nothing or pile on extra work without pay. If you complained, he'd make your life hell, scheduling you for closing, then opening, losing your paycheck for weeks." Clara's stomach twisted. "And corporate?" Lila snorted. "We tried, filed reports, called HR. Nothing. Then we noticed complaints vanishing from the system. That's when we learned about Simon." Clara's pulse quickened. "Simon Wells, the regional supervisor." "Go on." "Simon covered for Travis," Lila said. "Every time someone reported him, Simon would show up, act like he cared, then bury it. Schedules stayed brutal. People quit. At least 10 in my last year there." Clara's pen paused. 10 was no accident. It was a purge. "Why do you think no one fought back?" Lila met her gaze. "Fear. Travis didn't just control ours. He controlled us. You either played along or you were out." Clara nodded, her mind racing. This wasn't just one bad manager. It was a system designed to break people. By the time she left the cafe, her notebook was full. Timelines, names, patterns. Simon's role was clear. He wasn't just negligent, he was complicit. Clara leaned against her car, staring at the quiet town. She couldn't trust middle management or the usual channels. She needed proof, hard evidence that couldn't be erased. The next morning, Clara returned to Greenleaf Market, blending into the bustle of early shoppers. The air carried the familiar mix of ripe produce and cleaning solution, but the tension was sharper today. Esther stood at the register, her movement sluggish, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. Jonah was stacking canned goods, his shoulders tense, his glances darting toward Travis, who lounged near the counter, arms crossed, watching the store like a hawk. Clara slipped her phone into her bag, activating its recorder, and approached the counter with a loaf of bread. "Morning," she said to Esther. "Long shift?" Esther hesitated, her fingers pausing on the scanner. "Worked late last night, and the night before." Clara raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot." Before Esther could respond, Travis cut in, his tone smooth but firm. "She's fine with it, aren't you, Esther?" Esther nodded faintly, eyes down. "Right." Clara held Travis's gaze, her heart pounding with quiet fury. He was watching her now, his eyes calculating. She took her change and moved to the coffee station, pretending to fiddle with her drink while listening. Then, a crash. A jar of pickles slipped from Jonah's hands, shattering on the tile. Green juice spread across the floor, the sharp tang cutting through the air. Travis was on him in seconds. "What's wrong with you?" he barked, his voice echoing. "Every shift, you screw something up. If you can't stack shelves, maybe you're not cut out for this." Jonah froze, his face burning with shame, hands shaking as he grabbed a mop. Customers stared. Employees looked away. Clara's jaw clenched. The kid had made a mistake, but Travis's reaction was a performance, meant to humiliate. She strode back to the counter, setting her coffee down with a thud. "Loud morning," she said, her tone light but pointed. "Do you always talk to your staff like that?" Travis blinked, caught off guard, then smirked. "Just keeping things running. Kids need discipline." Clara let the silence stretch, her eyes locked on his. "Interesting. I thought leadership meant building people up, not tearing them down. His smirk faltered. This doesn't concern you, lady. As a customer, it does, she said. I shop here often, and it's hard to miss. Your employees look terrified of making a mistake. That's not good for business. Travis scoffed, but his posture shifted, defensive. You're blowing this out of proportion. Clara nodded slowly, then turned to leave, catching his reflection in the glass doors. He was studying her, his mind clearly turning. She'd rattled him. Outside, she exhaled, her pulse steadying. Travis wasn't just cruel, he was calculated, and now he was wondering who she was. In his cramped office, Travis sat hunched over his desk, replaying the security footage from the morning. The woman, mid-50s, sharp-eyed, too confident, was no ordinary shopper. She'd lingered too long, asked too many questions, challenged him in front of his staff. He rewound the tape, pausing on her face. Something about her set his nerves on edge. She wasn't local, that was certain. He grabbed his phone and dialed Simon Wells. What now? Simon's voice was gruff. Had a customer today, Travis said, keeping his tone even. Older woman, nosy, asking about schedules, how I run things. Simon paused. So? She's not just a customer, Travis said. Esther and Jonah acted cagey when I asked about her, like they knew something. Audits? Simon asked, irritation creeping in. Not that I've heard, Travis replied, but I don't like it. Simon sighed. Keep an eye on her. If she shows up again, let me know. Travis hung up, leaning back in his chair. If this woman thought she could meddle in his store, she was in for a surprise. In her hotel room, Clara sat at the desk, her laptop open to Greenleaf's internal system. The numbers were stark. Over 15 employees had quit Willow Creek in the past year, triple the rate of other stores. Most were older workers or minorities. Her frown deepened. This wasn't just Travis's doing. It was deliberate, systemic. She dialed a former employee, a man named Marcus Reed. I don't want trouble, Marcus said, his voice tight. I get it, Clara said gently, but I need to know. Did you leave because of Travis? A long pause, then a quiet, yeah. Did you report anything to corporate? She asked. Marcus laughed bitterly. We all did. Simon Wells investigated, then nothing. Complaints disappeared. Clara's grip tightened on her pen. Simon wasn't just ignoring issues, he was protecting Travis. By afternoon, she'd gathered enough to escalate. She called Simon directly. Clara, he greeted, overly polite. What a surprise. I doubt it, she said coolly. We need to talk about Willow Creek, in person. A pause. I'm busy this week. I'm not, she cut in. Tomorrow, your office. She hung up, staring at the phone. Simon knew why she was coming, and he was already scrambling for excuses. The next morning, Clara walked into Simon's office, a sterile space with a single window overlooking a strip mall. He sat behind his desk, arms crossed, feigning calm. Clara, what's this about? She placed a folder on his desk and opened it. This is every employee who's quit Willow Creek in the last year. Most are older or minorities. Simon barely glanced at it. Turnover's normal in retail. 15 isn't normal, she said. Marcus Reed says he filed complaints with you. Simon exhaled, leaning back. I can't micromanage every store. He says you ignored them, Clara pressed. His jaw tightened. I looked into it. Travis runs a tight ship. Some people can't handle it. Clara smiled coldly. Then why are they afraid to speak up? They're not, Simon said, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. I'm digging deeper, she said, closing the folder. This isn't over. Simon swallowed, his composure slipping. As she left, she heard him pick up the phone, no doubt calling Travis. That night, Travis tightened his grip. Esther arrived to find her shift extended without notice. Jonah was pulled into the office and told to sign a form stating the store ran smoothly, or lose hours. By noon, every employee had signed, their faces grim. Travis watched, satisfied, but a nagging doubt lingered. That woman, Clara, she wasn't done. In her car, Clara reviewed her notes, frustration mounting. Watching wasn't enough. Evidence wasn't enough. She needed to act. The store's fluorescent lights glowed as she pulled into the lot that evening, the air thick with the scent of rain-soaked earth. Inside, the atmosphere was heavier than ever. Esther moved slowly, her face pale, her hands unsteady. Jonah stocked shelves with robotic precision, his eyes avoiding Clara's. The young cashier was gone. "Quit," Clara overheard a customer mutter. Travis emerged from the back, his posture tense, his eyes scanning the store. "Another no-show," he said loudly, glaring at Esther. "You'd think I was running a circus." Esther's hands fumbled with the scanner. Clara's heart ached. She saw the toll this was taking, the way Esther seemed to carry the weight of the entire store. She approached the counter, setting down a pack of gum. "Your employees look exhausted," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Are they getting paid for all this?" Travis smirked. "What's it to you?" "Just curious," Clara said. "It's unusual to see so much strain in one place." He laughed, but it was hollow. "Lady, you don't know how this works." "Then explain it," she challenged, holding his gaze. The moment stretched, Travis's confidence wavering. Before he could respond, Esther dropped a stack of receipts, papers fluttering to the floor. Travis's face darkened. He grabbed her wrist as she bent to pick them up. "You can't even do this right," he hissed, his grip tightening. "You're lucky I don't fire you." The store froze. Jonah turned, his fists clenched, but still. Customers stared, silent. Clara's blood ran cold. She stepped forward, her voice like steel. "Let go of her! Now!" Travis flinched, startled, his fingers loosening. Esther pulled free, stumbling back, her eyes wide with fear and gratitude. Travis straightened, his shock morphing into calculation. "Who the hell are you?" A whisper cut through the silence, sharp and clear. "That's Clara Hensley." The words rippled through the store. Esther gasped softly. Jonah's posture shifted, his eyes locking on Clara. Customers murmured, sensing something big. Travis's face paled, but he forced a smile. "I don't know what you've heard, but I keep this place running. Maybe there's been a mix-up." "No mix-up," Clara said, her voice steady. "I've seen it myself. I'm Clara Hensley, CEO of Greenleaf Market, and I don't tolerate managers like you." Silence gripped the store. Travis's mind raced. She could see it, the way his jaw twitched, his eyes darting. He forced a laugh. "Didn't expect the big boss," he said, his tone mocking. "If I'd known, I'd have cleaned up." Clara wasn't amused. She turned to the employees, their faces a mix of shock and hope. "This isn't over," she said, her eyes back on Travis. "You've been warned." Travis smirked, but it was thin, unsteady. "We'll see." Clara knew what that meant. He wasn't backing down. She'd have to be ready. The next morning the store felt different, as if the air itself held its breath. Clara walked in, her heart heavy with resolve. Esther was at the register, her hands shaking more than usual, her skin ghostly pale. Jonah avoided Clara's gaze, his movements jerky. Travis stood near the back, his presence oppressive, his eyes tracking her every step. Clara activated her recorder again, slipping it into her pocket, and grabbed a carton of eggs. She approached Esther, keeping her voice soft. "You okay?" Esther nodded, but her eyes screamed otherwise. "Just tired." Before Clara could press, a crash echoed. A jug of milk hit the floor, exploding in a white puddle. Jonah stood frozen, his face drained of color, hands hovering uselessly. Travis pounced. "Again?" he roared. "You're useless, Jonah. Maybe you should find a job that doesn't require thumbs." Jonah's shoulders slumped, his humiliation raw and palpable. Clara's chest tightened. She felt his shame, his helplessness. She strode forward, her voice cutting through. "Enough!" Travis turned, startled, then sneered. "Back again? You don't belong here." "I belong exactly here," Clara said, stepping closer. "You're not just a bad manager. You're a bully, and I'm done watching." His eyes narrowed, but before he could retort, a gasp tore through the store. Esther swayed, clutching the counter, her knees buckling. She crumpled to the floor, her breathing ragged, her face clammy with sweat. Clara was at her side in an instant, her hand on Esther's shoulder. "Esther, can you hear me?" Esther's lips moved, a faint, "I'm sorry." Clara's heart shattered. She looked up, locking eyes with Travis. He stood motionless, arms crossed, his face blank but his eyes cold. He'd seen this coming. He'd pushed her to this and done nothing. Fury surged in Clara's veins, but she forced it down. "Call an ambulance," she snapped at Jonah, who scrambled for the phone. Sirens wailed as the ambulance arrived, lights flashing across the storefront. Clara stayed by Esther's side, gripping her hand as paramedics lifted her onto a stretcher. "I'm going with her," Clara said, her tone leaving no room for argument. As they wheeled Esther out, Clara glanced back. Travis hadn't moved, his gaze calculating, planning. She knew then he wasn't just a threat to his employees. He was a threat to everything she was fighting for. At the hospital, Clara paced the sterile hallway, the beep of monitors a grim reminder of how close this had come to tragedy. A doctor approached, her expression serious. "She's stable, but dehydrated, exhausted, and her blood pressure's through the roof. Any history of stress or overwork?" Clara nodded, her throat tight. "She's been working brutal hours under constant pressure." The doctor frowned. "If she'd kept going, we'd be looking at a stroke. She needs rest. No work, no stress." Clara exhaled, guilt and resolve warring within her. She won't go back to that. As she left Esther's room, she pulled out her phone and dialed. "Ian Harper, Willow Creek Gazette," a voice answered. "I have a story," Clara said, "and it's big." Back at the store, Travis sat in his office, his phone buzzing. Simon Wells. "Tell me you've got this under control," Simon demanded. "It's handled," Travis lied, his jaw tight. "Handled?" Simon snapped. "Someone collapsed and corporate's asking questions. If they dig, they'll find everything." "Then we make sure they don't," Travis said, his voice low. "Time to clean house." That night, Clara sat at her hotel desk, checking Greenleaf's system. Her heart stopped. All Willow Creek records were gone. Schedules, payroll, complaints, erased. Travis had anticipated her, wiped the evidence. She leaned back, forcing herself to think. He thought he'd won. Then her phone buzzed. An unknown number. A distorted voice whispered, "Check your messages." A second later, an email arrived. Payroll sheets, altered time cards, and an exchange between Travis and Simon. "Travis, bury those complaints. If corporate looks, we're done." "Relax, Simon. They don't know what to look for." Clara's pulse raced. Someone had turned on Travis, and they'd given her everything. The next morning, Travis called an emergency meeting, his office packed with tense employees. Esther was still in the hospital, but Jonah stood at the back, arms crossed, his face unreadable. "Someone's talking," Travis said, his voice low, dangerous. "And I'll find out who." No one spoke, but the fear was palpable. Jonah shifted, his eyes flickering with defiance. Travis leaned forward. "Betray me, and you're out, all of you." "Oh." Then Jonah spoke, his voice steady. "You're scared, aren't you?" Travis's eyes snapped to him. "What? You're scared," Jonah repeated, louder, "because she's on to you." A murmur ran through the room. Travis's face reddened, but before he could respond, Clara's email hit corporate, attaching everything. Schedules, wages, emails. The response was swift. An investigation. Auditors arriving in 48 hours. The story broke that afternoon. Greenleaf market scandal. Labor abuse exposed. The article detailed Esther's collapse, Travis's intimidation, Simon's cover-up. Customers dwindled. The parking lot emptier than ever. Travis, desperate, called a press conference outside the store, painting himself as the victim. "Corporate's framing me," he said, his voice shaking with false sincerity. "They want control, not justice." A voice cut through. "Do they?" Clara stepped forward, folder in hand, her presence commanding. Travis's smirk vanished. She held up an email. "This shows you and Simon Wells hid complaints." She lifted a schedule. "This proves you falsified hours." Finally, a payroll sheet. "And this confirms you stole wages." The crowd went silent. Travis stammered, but the reporter's eyes were on Clara. "I don't manipulate," she said, staring him down. "The truth speaks for itself." The tide turned. Employees stepped forward. Jonah, then others, voicing years of abuse. "You threatened us," Jonah said. But we're done being scared. Clara faced Travis. You're fired. He scoffed, but corporate security was already there. Simon, seeing his own ruin, slipped away. Travis resisted, then slumped, defeated, as they led him off. Weeks later, the store felt different. Esther, recovered, smiled as she rang up customers, her relief palpable. Jonah, now manager, led with fairness, earning respect, not fear. Clara visited one last time, her heart lighter. Feels good, doesn't it? She asked Esther. Esther chuckled. Like I can breathe again. Clara's fight wasn't over. Corporate pushed back, resistant managers testing her. But she held firm, implementing fair wages, overtime pay, and anonymous reporting. The boardroom battles were fierce, but Clara rallied employees, their support undeniable. In court, Travis faced justice, restitution, community service, and a permanent ban from management. Simon's career crumbled under lawsuits and disgrace. Clara didn't set out to change the world, but she'd sparked something, a reminder that one voice, one stand, could shift the balance. Greenleaf Market wasn't perfect, but it was better, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now.